I'm Ryan, this is my brother Daniel, and this is Rolls in the Family. And today we are back for another monthly roundup. We don't call it that, but I just did. And that is when we go through and think, what are the best board gaming plays we had in the last month? In this month, we're talking about September. Best plays of September. Do you remember to drop in the comments below your top play of September? We'd love to hear what you've been playing. September was, felt like it kind of flew by. Very few of you watching this probably know that Daniel actually ran a marathon, his first marathon.
I did.
In September.
Yep.
And didn't die.
I didn't die, and it gave me, a good 4.5 hours to decide what my top plays were going to be.
That's good. Everything for the channel,
Everything
really.
for the channel.
Yes. As always, we will have links in the description to check any of these games out. I think I've got some pretty good games to talk about here. Worth checking out.
These are good.
Well, let's hand it over to Daniel, and he can get us started with number 3.
Yes, it was a great month. Just was playing, right before we recorded this video, Ryan, playing Hungry as a Bear with my daughter. So let's just say we've got some tough competitors.
Daniel's hated on me historically for my kids' board game picks, but now he's entering the season.
Man. My daughter's getting the hang of that thing. Yeah. Dropping the food in the mouth. But that game did not make my top plays. Sorry to my daughter. But my number 3 play, Ryan, is one that you owned originally, and you actually owned the original. This is kind of the sequel to a game that we've had for a long time. You've had for a long time, and we love. I finally got a copy of it, but just hadn't played I think this was the first time I'd actually played my copy, despite having it for, close to a year, I want to say. But got a chance to play it, and this is going to go to Last Bastion. Got to pull this out with a buddy of mine. It was kind of at the end of a gaming session that we were having. I feel like that's kind of oftentimes where Last Bastion falls. It's not necessarily... Yeah,
we just want to throw some dice and have some excitement.
You don't plan a game night to this is what we're going to play, but it's more like, we've got like an hour, at the end of the night, and man, this game just fills that slot perfectly. It was his first time playing it, so... got to teach it and whatnot, and pulling it out again. Several things jumped out. One, I love the production quality of that game.
They did a really good job with it. It
looks so good on the table. Like the colors are just vibrant and all of that. So that was fantastic. I'm reminded of the changes they made because obviously this is kind of a sequel to Ghost Stories, and changes that are just significant and I mean, one, obviously, I find it so crazy that they made the change that you can move diagonal. I mean, that's just like that's not a tiny change. That's, huge. But I find, that makes kind of versatility of movement a lot more interesting. The actions are, I found we were using, pretty much every action space for a certain situation, which I know in Ghost Stories that wasn't always the case of there were kind of our go-to action spaces, and then there were a couple that we're almost never went to. But man, it was just, I think it really delivered the experience that I look for in this game. It was a tense game. Kind of went down to the end. We ended up losing right before the final boss, which was too bad. But just a fun game of chucking dice and using your player powers, kind of looking at this puzzle of how do we give ourselves the best chance of surviving, and so it was a ton of fun to get that one to the table, and just really feels like, it fits that, we're always talking about what spot in the collection does a game fit, and for that, just kind of our cooperative, survive chucking dice type game, this really is the game for me. So my number 3, Last Bastion.
Last Bastion. Yeah, I haven't played it in a while. It's interesting. You were talking about the diagonal movement, which is a huge change with how much you can get a like. I mean, if you think about like if you're in a corner and want to get to the other corner in the other game, that would be like 4 moves, and now you can make it in 2. But it was occurring to me that like a lot of times when we would play Ghost Stories, I think we would fall into these situations where people would be kind of stuck in an area because it's like, oh, you're the one moving the hunters back on that thing, or you're the one in this corner that's, doing the thing to roll to get the Tau tokens. But I think the diagonal movement makes it easier to like switch responsibilities and like move around because it isn't so expensive, to take multiple turns to do that, which I think is a positive change to be able to just be a little bit more dynamic.
Yeah, I agree. I was trying to think, because in some ways I was like, how does this not break the game? Like, like it it's such a huge change. But what was an interesting thing I did notice, I believe I'm right on this, is in Ghost Stories, there was the action tile, you could move I think another player to any space. Whereas in this one, you can move another player 1 space. I want to say, correct me down below if I'm wrong on that, but I was looking at it.
Yeah, it's been a hot minute.
And I believe so there might have been a little bit of balancing there as well, of making sense you can move diagonal, making the move someone anywhere tile or maybe it was move them twice in Ghost. I can't remember exactly what it was. But anyways, gosh, the changes are so good and the game just feels like, yep, this is the
I really love the switch of the from the haunters to now the corruption evil
I
or
called
something.
Them haunters. I don't know what they're called.
Because in Ghost Stories, it was just the haunters that would move forward.
Yeah.
But now it's kind of like more than that. It could be those that are moving forward to try to haunt, but it also is the same thing that takes away your abilities. And so when you do one of those actions that lets you remove those, it's a little bit more interesting decision of which ones do I remove. And it's not all of them. It's not like move all the haunters back. It's get rid of some of them.
Yeah.
So I really like that.
And it's not only monsters player board, but also instead of flipping a tile, you just put the thing on it.
Exactly. So it's kind of a
integrated into that. I think that is such a good change, and both from just a simplicity perspective, of it just keeps it's just very simple in kind of how that works, but also I find the strategy in it just even better. So yeah, it was wonderful to get that one to the table, Ryan.
Nice. Yeah, I got to get that one played again.
Yeah.
My number 3 is a game that we've been pretty hot on in the last year or so. Pun entirely intended. This is Heat, Pedal to the Metal. This has been probably one of the biggest new games to our collection. As far as it's one that gets played, quite a bit. It's easy to get to the table, but it just it hits a spot that we haven't had a game that hits quite this spot, this racing game, and the feeling it gives you of pushing and trying to jockey, your way to finish ahead. I had kind of an interesting day of, we thought I was going to have a friend coming over. This is the friend that was in my Journeys in Middle-earth campaign, and is going to be leaving, at time of filming this, has left back to the UK. And when he was back here for the summer, Heat was one of the games that he mentioned, it'd be really fun to play that before he left. So we thought he was going to be coming over. So it was it'd be good to get Heat to the table. Then he wasn't able to make it, but the group of us who were there were we still ended up picking Heat because we were I had a friend that hadn't played it, and it just felt like a good pick. And so we played it, had a great time, finish it. Well, later that night, one of my other friends left, and so it was just 2 of us. Later that night, the first friend actually now could come, way later.
Is everyone tracking?
Yeah, sorry. So the one that we originally were going to play Heat for, that wasn't going to be there, now came, and so it was we wanted you to play Heat.
Yeah.
We already played it. And so we actually pulled it out again. And we played it again that night. And here's the thing. When we're picking games and it was we could pull it out again, both me and the other friend who had just played Heat for the first time were both we would totally play Heat again. It wasn't even a feeling of I would have liked to play something else. I was Heat would be so fun to play
Yeah.
again. And that really is a testament. Like, there's not a lot of games, I think, that within a game day I would not feel like I'm missing out on, like, oh, I didn't get another game to the table. We were just like happy to get to play it again. We also, in both games, because both games we were trying to kind of go a little quicker, and so it's like, do we use the garage module? You have to do that initial draft. We decided, hey, let's just deal everybody 3 garage module cards. And those are the 3 you get. Like, no draft or anything, just
That's
get 3.
smart.
And that was actually very fun because you're kind of forced to get whatever you get. And like, you might get ones that you wouldn't have picked. And it's like, okay, how am I going to work with that? And, there can be some funny, but yeah, I mean, it's like instant. If you want to shave off that 5 to 10 minutes at the beginning of the game, but still use them.
Oh, that's smart.
We thought that worked really well. I mean, is it
it
perfectly balanced? Probably not,
cares?
because like somebody might get lucky, but who cares? There's a lot of other luck in the game. But yeah, we've had a lot of videos recently that we've talked about what we love about Heat, the card management and just the racing, and heck, the module with they call it the Legends, I think, where you can put in the bots.
So good.
We had them perform very well, at least in one of our games. We like lost to some of them.
It's so balanced.
It's really just well done, and how quickly you can execute it. It doesn't add much upkeep, but it really fills out the board, because both our games were just with 3 players, but we're playing with 6 cars because of that. So a lot of fun. I like that I now know that I kind of have this option of like just dealing out garage module cards instead of not using it if I feel like we're a little tighter on time. But yeah, I actually got 2 games of it within the day. And
did you win either of them?
Fun. I don't know that I did. I think I did real bad in one of them. I know I lost to at least some of the Legends people in one of them, which I don't know that that's really happened before.
That's
but
rough, man.
Yeah, they did well though.
Those Legends, man, they are.
But we were noting that I think the track they did really well on, like the track is well set up for them. I think it was because it was the one that has like a lot of turns really close together that like you can actually potentially hit 2 turns in one go, which as a human player playing with the actual cards is hard to pull off. Like you can do it, but the way the computer works, they actually had a decent odds of like hitting the 2 turns, which really gives them a pretty big advantage. And then the rest of the track is a really long straight, which the Legends are also pretty good at, because they can, some of their, movement values are pretty high. So we were just making excuses.
I think you just need to get better.
Yeah, we were just making excuses for justifying to ourselves that we only lost.
Yeah, is the track. The track. Very nice. Typical Ryan. Very nice, Ryan. Yeah, that sounds like a ton of fun. Gosh, I just want to play that one again. Maybe we'll play it. We're gonna be seeing each other soon. Maybe I'll bring that one.
Maybe.
My number 2. I think people are gonna start getting sick of hearing about this game.
I'm sick of it.
Yeah, Ryan already is. But got to play this game again, and my eyes have been enlightened to the possibilities of where both my heart and my wallet could go moving forward from this place. And this is going to go to Arkham Horror, the card game.
We haven't talked about it that much yet.
I know. But, I guess maybe I'm just thinking about it consuming my
Daniel's
mind
already
all the time.
assuming that this is going to be in his top plays for the next
That's right.
few
I've already
months.
slotted in for the next 12 months, so get ready, folks. No, got to. So, funny thing about this, we actually restarted the Night of the Zealot campaign because I made an egregious rules mistake on the.
Check the last video if you want to hear more about Daniels.
It was. Let's just say I made it nearly impossible for us to win. So, after realizing the mistake afterwards, we're like, okay, let's reset, try it over again. And so we played the same scenario, which honestly was kind of a good test, even initially, of like, okay, like, is it still fun to play,
And you were doing it with, I assume, the same decks and characters
like,
and everything.
Literally went into it with the exact same thing. And it is so much fun. One, I don't have a game, it's I feel like I'm getting to experience the love that you have for Lord of the Rings. Of just the drawing the cards, figuring out the best way to play, and also knowing your deck, and so kind of being like, okay, I've got this in my deck, and just figuring out the best way to play it. The thing I am so impressed with this game is the thematic experience it's able to deliver. Now we enhance this with I've got my speaker next to the game with I found it awesome.
Daniel's in a robe with candles.
Picture black.
It's hard. It's hard not to get into the theme.
No, but found a great like soundtrack, which I tell you what, a game like that, you just have a nice little Arkham Horror kind of background music.
You hired some people to do some chanting in the corner.
Yes, in the back room. Yes. But I think what's so cool is, obviously it's just a card-driven game, but you really feel thematically what's happening. I mean, I remember the moment. So, I mean, it's the first scenario, so this isn't a, big
first. It came out over a decade ago. Come on,
folks. I'm not spoiling anything here. But essentially the final boss character, comes out and so we're in he comes out with us in the hallway. And so, you're imagining all this, and we're even like just talking this through, and we're like, we got to get back to the bedroom. And so we evade and we get back to the bedroom. Well, he for some reason wasn't chasing us right away or something like that. So we were like playing some cards, and we were like putting up like kind of some barricade stuff, and so we're like prepping in the bedroom. Well, he ends up whipping out a shotgun, and so he and then the ghoul priest bursts through the door, and his shotgun, we need him to hit on these. Like if he misses these, we're gonna be in rough shape. So he first roll on the shotgun, and he pulls you pull the chips for the die roll, and he hits, and it just like, you just imagine all of this happening, and that's one thing I love about it, as opposed to maybe like an Eldritch Horror or whatnot, where it's a little more just big picture, kind of just random things happening. Very fun, but a little more random. This one, man, you just feel the story that's happening, and the way whatever cards you play, like the story is going to be generally the same every time you play the scenario, right? The general progression of it, but the cards that you play change how you picture what's happening. What you pull, whether you pull out a gun or you bring out this thing and for a distraction, like that's going to change how the story unfolds. So we did end up actually winning the scenario, which was fun. Then got to experience a little bit of the first. It was slow of us just figuring out how does the whole upgrading of decks work. But we fortunately we used the Arkham Cards app. We use it kind of for the whole campaign, but it's really great because we can each sign in on our own devices, and then so the upgrading of our decks, like we can each kind of be at the same time going through, and it does a really great job of like showing what cards can you upgrade and stuff like that. Man, I am so excited about this one. And obviously we're gonna coming up here be probably wrapping up the we'll finish kind of the short beginner campaign, but then start to look at onward. Dunwich and beyond. So we were just talking beforehand how we both own this game, and it'll be kind of interesting to see both of us experiencing it.
And it's one that at least right now I'm more likely to probably play solo. I was playing it two-handed solo. It is interesting, you mentioned Lord of the Rings, and I think there is a lot of parallels, especially with like the deck building and like the drawing and kind of card management. But Arkham Horror is definitely like a more deeply thematic picture what's happening type of game than Lord of the Rings. Lord of the Rings I think tends to be you have to think a little harder to get immersed into the theme. And it's maybe a little bit more mechanical kind of as far as what you're focusing on. Honestly, for me, the closer parallel to something in my collection is probably Final Girl. Because that's really a lot of what I like about Final Girl is how you so can like picture these scenarios that are happening and like the excitement of it and like what you're bringing in. And it's got just how Arkham Horror has the random draws. Final Girl uses dice, so there's a lot of uncertainty in how things will resolve. But the big thing with Arkham Horror is that it's got the campaign element.
For sure. So. And I just like the strategy in the game. I found very fun. I mean, the tension of playing, on your turn, you can, pay resources to play a card, which obviously, is a big thing that you're doing. One thing we realized very quickly, play your asset cards before you encounter a monster, because any action you take doing that while they're with you, they're going to start attacking you. That was a big thing. But then you can also, get a resource or draw a card. And so just figuring out the managing of all of that, you're not just always playing cards. You sometimes need to dedicate some time to drawing, dedicate time to getting resources, balancing all that. I found really fun as well. So that is my number 2 of September.
Nice. My number 2 has not shown up on a top play. We honestly haven't talked of any game. This is the game that there's the biggest gap between how much we've played it and how much we've talked about it on the channel. Because I've played this game many times, but most of that was long before we started this channel. This is Cosmic Encounter. And Cosmic has been due to get to the table.
Nice.
Needed to get it to the table sometime, and realized that recently I was like, you know what? This could be a good opportunity, because I had our sister and another friend that were from the core, Cosmic group from way back. So love Cosmic and have played it a ton. And then one new player who I was like, I think they'll like it. And so we just had 4. And usually in my mind, I think of Cosmic as wanting to have 5 or 6. But I was like, it could be good with 4. And actually, I was super impressed. Like, I think I've recalibrated in my brain that 4 to 6 is really the range I like for this game, because it worked super well. There's maybe a little less, in the allying phase, there's just fewer allies that can come into play. But you also have some advantages of some of the abilities that are offense only abilities are a little bit more sometimes you don't want to take those because you're like, I'm going to get 1 or 2 turns the whole game. I'm hardly going to use my ability. With 4 players, it's a little bit better because there's fewer people. But we actually played back-to-back games of Cosmic. I did awful in both of them, but just to show that I can still have fun. So the first one I was Hate, which is a great example of an offense-only ability, because when it gets to my turn on offense, I can discard any card, and everybody else has to discard a card of that type. Otherwise, I get to kill 3 of their ships. So it's just this very
no
just
wonder
in
you
your
lost.
face.
Everyone hated you. Yeah.
Hated Hate. Actually, not only did I lose in both games I lost my ability. I lost enough home planets, which that doesn't happen that often.
That's not even just
I was getting
bad.
destroyed.
That's
I was getting destroyed.
really bad.
But yeah, our first game, so I was Hate, then our sister was Miser, who's the one that has the Horde, has a whole separate hand in addition to their normal hand. Then we had Citadel, which is the one that can place attack cards as defense citadels on planets and can choose to activate them to increase the defense on those planets. And then we had Might, that whenever he attacks, he, not optionally, but mandatory, must bluster the opponent, which is if that opponent has more than 3 cards, they have to randomly discard down to 3 cards. Which is very funny because it's very powerful. When you're getting attacked, you might lose the cards you wanted. But we were it's actually also sometimes bad for the Might, because if he wants to make a deal, the other person's like, well, maybe I'll be able to make a deal if you don't, if I don't lose my negotiate cards during this. So yeah, fun setup with those 4. And yeah, just playing this again was reminding me just the number of different aliens in this and how much they change the feel. So we go into the second game talking about change in feel. So I was Spiff in the second game. I might as well have been Nobody because I never even successfully used my ability. Spiff is a cool one. It's if on the attack, if you lose by more than 10, you get to crash land a ship as a colony.
Yeah.
So you can try to lose by more. And then we had the Pacifist, which is a classic one that really changes the field because they can win with a negotiate. If they do negotiate against attack, they win, which is hugely powerful. Porcupine, which any card in your hand you can spend as a reinforcement 1. So in any battle, you can just add all these +1s and get rid of your hand quickly if you want a new hand, which is interesting. But the one that changed the field more than any was what our sister had, which was Filth. And Filth can never coexist with anybody. So if ever you ally with her and go onto a planet, she would go onto the planet, but we go onto different planets. And if ever you would end up on the same planet, you would just get dropped off. Say she attacked a planet that I already had a foreign colony on, and she gets on, my foreign colony would go away because I won't coexist with Filth.
Oh my gosh.
And then when you're attacking Filth's home colonies, the first time you attack, you just destroy the ships, but you don't get to take the planet. You are just considered to have fumigated the planet. And everybody has to go home, and then later you can attack a fumigated planet to actually get a colony. So talk about an alien that just changes the dynamic of the game, and in a very fun way. And like, it was just very fun to see how that played out. And so, yeah, just 2 games of Cosmic that I think I had been coming off. One, I haven't played Cosmic much in the last, I mean, I'm just to put this in perspective, I've played it like almost 190 times total. But in the last like 5 years, I've probably played it like 5 times.
Yeah, your
or
graph
something
has,
like that.
you know.
Yeah. Over time.
Yeah.
And I think my last few had been a little lackluster, which is something that's a downside of Cosmic. You kind of don't know what you're going to get. And so it had me, I mean, it's dropped off my top 50 games of all time. It's kind of hovering outside there.
Yeah.
But these 2 games were just like solid examples of what I love about Cosmic, and it was really good to be reminded of what that game can be. Because I think I had started to get this idea in my head that I was really cooling on Cosmic, and like I don't like it as much as maybe I used to. And I think I corrected. Like, I think now it's like, no, there is nothing like this game. Absolutely nothing like this game. And if you have the right group and you've got some fun aliens in play, like, it is just it's a fun game of positioning and jockeying and negotiating and just like making the most of these situations you're in.
Yeah.
Of like, okay, I've got these cards and this, like, how can I best position myself?
It is with the right group, it's one of the best group interaction games.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I just think about it. This is, you know, on our rating scale, I mean, this is as far interaction as like you can get. I mean, because the whole game, it's just group conversation, you know, ally. I mean, it's just, and I think that when the game just facilitates such an incredible group experience. Gosh, you talking about it, Ryan, I need to play that game again.
Yeah.
Like, I miss it so much.
It's honestly like a gamer's party game in a lot of ways.
It is.
And with a smaller group, but like that's the feel you're kind of expecting.
Totally.
And honestly, like there's a lot of people that like, you know, these types of kind of take that card games like Exploding Kittens, or like there's a lot of these kind of mainstream ones. And I tend to not really enjoy most of those games where it's just kind of like light card game attacking each other. I feel like what people like about that, Cosmic like does it in a way I do like. Like, it's just like you get all this interesting interaction and attacking, and like, you know, there are cards that are kind of take that cards. I love that the flares, after you play them, come back to your hands. There's this dynamic of everybody kind of knows this person now has that capability that we didn't know. In fact, we actually had a very interesting finish to our second game where one of the players the new player had a flare. Let's see if I get this right, which was where when a player loses their power, he can play the flare to immediately establish a foreign colony in that player's system. If they lost it. And he didn't have it when I lost my power. So he like missed the opportunity. But then it came down to, at the very end of the game, the other friend that ended up winning, he was attacking into the system, and it was going to make the other player lose their power. And he's going for his winning colony at 4. Well, this other player is at 3. Well, normally if you're at 3, you're not going to ally with the person at 4 because you're not going to win and they're going to win. But in this instance, he allied with him because by them winning that, the player lost the power, which allowed him to play the flare to get the 5th colony. So he actually got the 4th and 5th. And
so were you guys just super confused at why he was allying?
No, because we knew he had the card.
Okay.
And so the attacker knew, hey, you can actually ally with me because if we pull this off, you know, you're going to be able to get your 5th.
That is awesome.
And it was one of those things. I mean, I've played a lot of Cosmic. I haven't seen that situation.
Yeah, that's sweet.
You know, and that's what's so cool about Cosmic, just what's in play, and with the flares, like you really can find some unique situations. So good to get Cosmic back to the table with a good group.
Oh, Ryan, that just warms my heart.
Yeah.
Just warms my heart.
It's a worn box pulling Cosmic off the shelf there. That thing has seen some love.
Speaking of warming people's hearts,
Yes.
Ryan, I hate to do this. I hate to do this, but the game just does it, and it just does it again. Funny enough, I got 2 plays of it actually, because
I was surprised. I was like, they're back at it again.
So talk about getting 2 plays. We are coming hot off declaring a certain game as both of our favorite games of all time. And I will say, as I was pulling it out as was actually at the cabin we were staying at for the marathon, there's a little bit of like questioning in my mind of like, is this really my, that's a big, there's a lot of other games I love. Is this really, I was having some hesitation. And then I played Agricola, my number 1 play of September, and
she doesn't miss.
he doesn't miss. Ryan, it was so much fun. Oh my goodness. Like, it just, that game, the cards and are just so incredible. So both games were incredibly fun. I'm going to focus on kind of the first one. First of all, I've never played as many major improvements as I played in this game. I'm like, I've got a picture here. I think I played 6 major improvements, and I didn't play the one that makes major improvements cheaper.
Yeah,
which
that's
is
what I was
quite
surprised
ironic about it. But
in fact, it was a huge strategic blunder. So you
Huge
could have saved
blunder.
a lot of.
Oh my gosh! No, but so here's the thing: is you get these cards. And there is so much satisfaction in figuring out how the heck am I going to do this? And I love it because there's multiple strategy. Like, I'll be like, okay, I could maybe kind of do a strategy around this, or I could, but man, what if I do that? But then you also don't really have, it's not like you just lay out your whole strategy, because you're going to have to be able to pivot and whatnot. So you kind of have a general idea and you just start going, and then you have to kind of adapt as it goes on. So my initial strategy, I had a card, a minor improvement called Thicket. And so this one, you have to have 4 forest tiles out there, but you play it and you add another forest tile on top of 4 of your existing ones. So now they're like stacks of 2, and you can't do a slash and burn until you fell the top layer off. So you essentially have extra tiles,
but you got to get the
top layer off. However, I end up getting the Forester's Lodge. Now, my original plan was like, okay, this is going to be a great way to get lots of wood.
And still score a lot for Forester's Lodge.
But then I realized the bottom of Forester's Lodge, you get a victory point per tile. And so I was like, I'm just going to not try to cut down as little as possible. Like, I could get a lot of points here. And so, I had kind of, that was the initial thing.
Did you at least have a favorable forest arrangement? Because some forest arrangements like really constrain your house.
This one was worked out okay. And so I'm just scanning my cards here, and I had this occupation that if your house has exactly 2 rooms, you immediately renovate it without paying any building resources. So that was a big thing for like helping with the kind of heating of it. And then, just, I don't know, as it was going on, like the comboing of all of the different cards was just incredible. I picked up Basket Maker's Workshop at the end because it was one of those situations where there was like all this reed collecting, and so I was like, oh my gosh, I guess I'll go snag that. And oh my goodness, Ryan, you talk about a game that you get to the end and it is satisfying. My goodness, when you pull it off and you just have this beautiful board with all of these cards that you comboed all together to pull, like, make it happen. It is so incredible. And so, like, I don't care if you listeners are sick of it. This game, man, like, it delivers such a joyous experience. And for it to me to come in with questions. I was questioning Ryan. I was like, man, I love cooperative games. Do I really like this more than a TI4? Do I really like this more than, these
Nemesis?
Yeah, like I think about the group experience. Like, is this really it? It is. It is, Ryan. And so, you talked about playing Heat back to back. We played. I mean, it wasn't back to back the same day, but I'm like, my wife's like, you wants to play another game of Agricola? I'm like, absolutely, because the cards you get are gonna just change everything with how that game feels. Man, and the revised edition is so good. It was interesting. We kind of played with everything. So we played. There's a few variants of. There's an optional kind of lower board that is a single.
It's a 2-player thing.
Yeah, it's a 2-player. There might be one for 3 as well, but a 2-player. It's a single action, but there's 4 options of what you can do with that single action. So there's a 1 wood accumulation. There's a get another family member starting at round 5. So it kind of guarantees that family member is available at that point. There's a get a stone and a food. And I think there's one more. I really like it because actually one of my complaints about 2-player was it was just a little too brutal. Like, I like the game being tight. I don't like when it's like, well, one person
brutal with the other player.
Yeah.
Because it's like, oh, I could take this and really,
because we had several games, especially now that you're heating your home, where like I've taken wood at the end, and it's like, oh my gosh, there's no way to get wood, and it's like ruined the and it just there's been a few times where I haven't loved that. I felt like this action just eased it a little bit. It didn't make the game not feel tense anymore. It was still very tense. So I loved it. I thought I'm going to play with it every time. I thought it was a great addition there. And then we also played with the father and mother cards, which are very insignificant. Like, they really, like, usually it's like the mother gives you 1 resource at some point in the first few rounds. And then the father is some kind of, if you have this, you can flip it over and get this. But again, just a little thing that amidst all the cards, you're like, oh, okay, I could do that and use that. And it's so good, Ryan. So
good.
I want to play it. I want to get a 4-player game of that so I can use all the cards. And that's really the last thing that, but man, the revised edition cards are so good. That was the most shocking thing, Ryan. I can't believe how much better the cards feel in the revised edition.
Like how noticeably
better. So there you go.
Well, I'd love to keep talking about Agricola. I didn't play it this month.
You could still just
so
fake
otherwise it would have been my number one. My number one's actually a brand new game. A game that has gained some popularity. It's actually originally was a video game.
Okay.
Now has made a board game version. Was pretty skeptical about them making a board game version. Did I tell you?
I was like, I didn't know you got that.
It has gained some popularity more recently because it actually, I think it won the Spiel des Jahres last year. This year. This is Dorfromantik, the board game.
Oh my gosh, yes. I forgot this is
and
your
this
number
is one I picked up very recently. It was actually on a Nerds Day.
Nerds Day, yeah.
Nerds Day deal, which I'm not usually a big Nerds Day. I wasn't usually not a big Nerds Day person, but there were a few games that popped up that I had been, higher on my wish list, this being one of them. And this is one I was like, I think my wife might really like this game, because it's very kind of laid back, cooperative, building up this landscape. And then I kind of had the realization, I think my son totally could play this game with us. And so then it was like, oh, this could be really cool to have a game that me, my wife, and my son, who's 4 now, can play together and just like have that fun shared experience. And then it also has kind of the legacy aspect of like unlocking things as you go, which is fun to share with other people. But this is such a game that like I feel like so depends on going into it with the right expectations. Like if you go in with like a more gamery group and you're expecting something different, I can see this falling really flat because it's literally every turn you draw a tile and you choose where it should go, and everybody can talk about it. We can discuss where it should go, but ultimately the person whose turn gets to make the final decision. And then you just keep going around, and then there's these task tiles that come out. There's always going to be 3 of them, but whenever you complete one, then you'll end up adding another one, so there's always 3. And so you'll draw one that's like, oh, this is a river task, and you draw a number, and it's like, okay, it's a 5. We place that out there. That task will complete when the river that task is on is exactly 5 long, 5 spaces. And so the game is all about trying to like complete these tasks and like set yourself up for them. Because like you can kind of like think ahead of like, okay, we got this group of wheat or whatever to 4. Let's not grow it anymore because we know the tasks are always from 4 to 6. So if we draw, a 5, we could instantly complete it because we already, we could just add it to this pre-existing one. But it's very satisfying to see it all just build up, and it's just very laid back, kind of chatting and doing this. And there's some other little things in the very base vanilla game of like each of the 3 terrain types has one that has a flag on it that at the end of the game it'll score for how big the group of that terrain that has that flag is, but only if you completely enclosed it. So think kind of like Carcassonne with like finishing a city. Like you have to have it finished, otherwise it's not going to score at all.
Right.
And you're also going to score, besides all the tasks that you completed, you also score for your longest river and your longest railroad. And so we had just a great time playing it, but then I so see now the potential of, we've unlocked you very, after the first game, you unlock kind of the first box, and it just adding a little bit of, it's like little rule changes, but it's things that like help raise your score ceiling, because ultimately the game is a game at the end you score and you see how you did. And based on your score, that's going to determine like how many check marks you get to be like unlocking stuff. But then unlocking stuff is giving you things that can increase your scoring potential. And so you can reach higher levels. And so that's really the whole appeal of the game. And I can see where some people, like if you're really wanting more of a win-loss outcome, it could be a little anticlimactic because you don't get that. You get like, we got a good score. We got a little bit less good score than last time. But again, it's so just like understanding the type of game you're playing and the fact that it lets me play it with that group and without it being a kid's game. Yeah. But I mean, we were just having such a good time. It was, I don't know. Like, and I also can see it being, it's a game that you can easily reset it, and play through it again. And I've heard, people and even more gamer, people that have really enjoyed playing it multiple times. So I'm really kind of just like pleasantly surprised by this game. Yeah. I think there had been some, I know like the Dice Tower reviews and stuff were pretty like lukewarm. They didn't really enjoy it much, which maybe that's just coming from more of that gamer perspective, but I'm coming from that gamer perspective, and like I guess I just like see where this is going to work so well. And I could see just situations where like, man, this would just be it's almost like getting closer to like a group together doing a jigsaw puzzle. But as a game and like more structured and like where I still enjoy that parts of it. Right. But the vibe is so, kind of chill, and like it's just fun to kind of be trying to optimize this puzzle together. Yes. No, at the table.
No, well, I tell you what, a huge thing I think we talk about is when games, talking about them, whether they're on our top plays or whatnot, it's not just games for us. We don't just keep games that we personally love the most, like what game gives me the most personal enjoyment, but it's at least for me, and I think you agree, like also so much of the enjoyment is how well does a game work for certain situations. And
when I look at my collection, I'm looking for my favorite games for every situation. And so there's situations that situation isn't going to be my top games of all time, like if I'm looking through that lens, but I'm looking for what's the best game that fits these conditions. And so, when you start, I've talked about that with games like, like Strike, which is a game that plays in 5 minutes. It's like, is this the greatest game of all time? Well, no, But if I'm comparing it to games I can play in 5 minutes
That's
with people
pretty
and
high
get
up
people
there.
excited, there's not a lot of competition, and it
Right.
does it really well.
Right.
So I mean, it just is across every
Yeah.
area of the collection. What is something I'm going to want to play and
Right.
feel like it works really well?
Yeah, I'm trying to think. I mean, of games that you've played that have worked well for both, with your wife and your son. I think. Have you done Marvel United with
Marvel United? We haven't played it a lot with the three of us. Admittedly, there's not a lot of times that the three of us play
Yeah.
games because we have my younger son. So it's basically if
He's just off, you know.
it's if my younger son is napping. It's like the one time that we're gonna like play this
Yeah.
together.
Nice.
But yeah, there's been some other ones, and there's some good, solid kids games that we
Yeah.
enjoy playing together. Some other lighter ones. But this one, it has the added piece of like we're kind of going through a campaign together, right?
Mhm.
Like we've got the sheet and so it is one of those things that's just fun to share that type of experience and like, see my 4-year-old getting so excited about we get to open a box, like what's it going to
Mhm.
add into the game and like
That's
what's
awesome.
going to change. It's just very fun. I could see like, our mom really enjoying this game. I'm actually honestly trying to think about like, okay, like we're doing a campaign of it, but how can I kind of think of this game as a game I could just pull out?
Mhm.
Because there could be situations where like, yeah, this would be really fun to just, play a relaxed game of, but not have it actually like progressing any of the campaign or anything.
Right.
But yeah, I pleasantly surprised by Dorfromantic.
Hey, we've got links to all of these games down below where you can go click on them, check them out for yourself, maybe purchase one, see if it'd be a good fit for you. But we've got also lots of other videos on the channel, a couple recommended right here, and we will see you in the next one.